Today we are transitioning into a new season, but still bringing in some of our favorites from summer, whether it's pumpkin ice cream. We're also gonna make a delicious warm and cozy squash soup. It works so well as the weather starts to turn just a little bit cooler. And one of my favorites, apple cake. I'm picking so many apples right now for my orchard, and I wanna use them in whatever way possible. And this cake just brings out the essence of the flavor of the season. And that's why I can't wait for you to make each one of these with me. Let's go. Nothing feels more seasonal than a spiced apple cake, and this is honestly my favorite one. Now we're gonna start with some oil. That helps keep any cake really moist and gives it that perfect kind of ability to stay fresh for a few days, and that's what I love. Some butter, because we want the flavor of butter. Butter gives flavor, oil gives moisture, and the play of both of them sometimes is really important. And then of course some sugar. Now we're making a big cake here. It's gonna be a beautiful, large one that you can make into a tube pan, which I really like because I like that style of cake. What we're gonna start with is just creaming this together. Now, oil never creams the same as, say, just normal butter and sugar. So it's gonna be a little bit different, but you still wanna really mix it well. So you can see it's not exactly light and fluffy like we sometimes say, but it's definitely well mixed. So with it running on low, I'm gonna have my eggs all cracked. I'm gonna add them one by one. I just wanna make sure they're well incorporated. When all the eggs are in, you can add some vanilla. Now you know I have my homemade vanilla, that's what I love to use. No, I don't always measure it because, come on, why would you? So mix that in, that can be really quick, but then we can just move on to our dry ingredients. Now, for a cake, of course, we need flour. So this is a big cake, like I said, so we're gonna have quite a bit of flour, but that's why we're putting all this kind of plethora of things in, because we want it to be a nice full cake. It can feed a lot of people. What I often do with it is I freeze it. I'm someone that freezes any baked good, especially when there's extra. So if I'm not making it for an event or for something special, I always freeze it. So I'm putting the flour in, and now with that we need some baking powder. So baking powder is going to, again, give it some lift, kind of like the eggs do, but a little bit more. So we're gonna put that right in there. We of course need salt. Any baked good needs salt, and especially with the apples, I think it brings out more flavor. And then, since we are talking more of those autumnal notes, we need some cinnamon. Now I know some people think cinnamon can be overused. I think in this case, it doesn't overpower the apples, but it really brings out the cake and kind of what you want to enjoy in the fall. And then a little bit of allspice. A little bit goes a long way, kind of like with cloves. So you don't want any too much, but you definitely want enough, and it kind of just brings out that really seasonal flair that you love. So I'm gonna start this on low, and then just make sure there's no dry streaks remaining. That is now all done, and we're gonna pull it off here in a minute, but first I wanna finish up my apples. So I have started the apples, but I grow a lot of different types of apples, and I love to use them in different ways, obviously, in the fall when I'm baking. Now, I never worry specifically, since I grow them, about what apple I'm using, because I have so many different varieties, and to me, if it's a fresh apple, if it's ripe, if it's in season, if you're picking it, it's a good apple to use. If you're going to a store and wanting to buy them, you want a good baking apple, and that means not necessarily the fully crisp apple. That means something that's kind of a little bit less, so it breaks down during baking and gets a little bit more soft. So you can just take off a little bit of that skin. You know what, honestly though, I hate to waste it. Oftentimes I eat this, or I put it in my compost bucket, of course, and then it just feeds my compost pile, which is nice too. So what we want to do is just slice the apple. Now, if there's any bad pieces, since I grow my apples, since I grow them organically, they do have bad spots on them. That is very normal. And I don't think that should scare anyone. Just cut out anything that's bad. Let me look here. Yeah, here. Here's one that has a really bad spot. I would just cut that out, remove it, and then just treat the apple like any other. Now, if you want to do the apples way ahead, of course, some acid, a little bit of lemon juice over them. I think it actually brings out the flavor more too. Or you can put them even in acidulated water. So some lemon juice in water, put them in the water, let them sit just so they don't get too brown, because they will continue to brown as they oxidize. So right here in front of me is all that beautiful batter. I always do like to give one final turn with a spatula, just because you want to make sure everything was mixed evenly. And this is a lot of apples, right? We want a lot of apples because we want that flavor and we want it to be full of them. And then we're also gonna put in walnuts. Walnuts and apples, fall, it just all makes sense together. Of course, you can leave the walnuts out. I'm not gonna make you have nuts. I know some people really hate nuts, but I think they're really good. So if you notice, I'm folding this all together, and as you fold, those apples are gonna release some of the liquid. And you'll notice that because the batter will actually thin down a little bit more. I have a greased with nonstick baking spray tube pan. So mine does have a removable bottom. It doesn't have to, it does just make it easier to get it out. So as opposed to an angel food cake where you do not grease because you want to cling to the sides, in this case we are greasing because we want it to come out very well. I think this just makes nice slices, and I think the reason for a tube pan honestly is so it bakes differently, obviously, a little bit more even, which this heavy batter does like. So I'm gonna put it all around even and then slightly smooth it out. And you will notice, I make sure to get every little bit out. If not, I just know somehow my mom will show up here and she will say, "What are you doing? Let me finish that bowl." Or grandma would have too. But do smooth it out as you're doing it too, just to make sure you're getting it nice and even, because as it bakes, it should self-level, but I always think a nice little spatula to do it too. Let's pop this right into the oven and let it bake. Is fall the best time of the year? It might be, because you can make delicious things like my favorite squash soup. You know, what I love about squash soup is it uses one of the best things of the season, and that's butternut squash, but you can use so many other squash. If you like kaboka, if you like buttercup, you can use all those. And what is great about it is they are simple, they are in season, and they have that sweetness of that bright orange flesh. And it's going to be the star of the show in this soup, and that's what I love about it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start by cutting off. This is the hardest part of squash, is just breaking it down. Not as hard as a turkey at Thanksgiving, but you do have to have a little bit more force and a sharp knife, because squash can be thick-skinned, no matter what type. But look at that beautiful interior, right? So what we wanna do is cut it in half. That's how I like to do it. And you can peel it when it's whole, or you can peel each half. It's kind of whatever you're comfortable with. I like to go each half. But if you notice, I have a very sharp knife and I still had to use a little bit of pressure there to get through. So once I have it in half, look at that. It is beautiful. If this doesn't get you excited for a good soup, and I know squash soup anymore, it's kind of normal, you hear about it, but this is to me simple, and it is just the best of what you need to have in the soup. So I like to use a grapefruit spoon, for grapefruit, yes, but also to clean out the seeds, because if you notice those little teeth on it, those tines, they kind of just get in there and give you a nice, see how easy it is to get around? Look at all this. I can just get in there easy and just kind of clean it out. Now, what's nice, I personally, if I remember right, the variety I love to grow is Canadian gooseneck, because it has more flesh up here and a longer neck than it does kind of the seed ratio, which is kind of just depends. I'm not saying you're gonna grow it, but if you do, that's the one I really like. They clean up pretty easily. Now this, you can, of course, you can roast the seeds if you want to. You can compost them. You can dry them and plant them next year if you know how this one was growing. So then I like to go in and peel it. Now, when I am roasting this on, say, like a weeknight basis and I'm gonna use it just for dinner or something, I don't peel it. Now in this soup, I sometimes think when you go to puree it, because this is a pureed soup in the end, this peel can be a little bit hardier and thicker than some other things. So I definitely like to go in and peel it just so you have a nicer consistency, which is still rich and creamy and thick, but in the soup itself. I think it's easier to work with a half at a time when peeling, just because here, do you notice how I can grab onto it? Kind of, I like that. When you have a whole one, it can be kind of hard. This I can kind of put against the counter or my board here and give a little bit more kind of stability to it, which I like. But if you have a little bit of white from the peel, that's okay, but just to get that kind of more thick, hard peel off, do you see how quick and easy that is? To me, so much of cooking, it's not always about being told what to do, it's about doing it yourself and kind of finding what you like, and that's exactly what we need to do here. Once you do it a time or two on yourself, you're gonna be like, this is how I do it. Once it's all peeled, again, great compost. Do you compost? If not, hopefully you can start, or maybe your town has a program. So here what I'm gonna do is just break it down. There's no right or wrong here, because really this is a soup that does get pureed later. Sometimes squash soups don't, but a lot of them do. And that's because squash is so good at kind of having that rich, creamy, thickening quality when it gets pureed. So I'm just breaking it down into smaller pieces so it cooks a little bit more evenly. You know, it will cook eventually, obviously, as is, but if you cut it into more small pieces like this, it cooks more evenly. Now that the squash is done, we can really start with the base of the soup, which is gonna start with onions. So this is really simple. We're not doing tons of extra kind of additives. We're gonna start with sauteing onion in butter, because I feel like when you get to fall, you want a little bit more of that butter flavor in certain things, and I think sauteing the onion in the butter really does make a difference. I'm gonna salt it now to bring out some of that extra liquid and kind of water content in the onions, and then just break them down so they get well seasoned. With the squash, I also have some apple chopped up. Again, that brings more flavor, it really does, but it also brings sweetness. So you're playing again with that sweetness in a beautiful savory soup, and it really, to me, just rounds it out, and it really makes you feel the season. So in here you can see that onion has been sauteing. It's just translucent. We want to get it right before it gets too brown. It's just maybe getting around the edges. And this is when I like to add some spices because I think they bloom in the butter, which is a fat much better. So we're gonna put in some yellow curry powder. Again, that's a blend of spices, but the way it just works in this autumnal soup, a little bit of cinnamon, which is very actually, in most parts of the world, used for savory dishes, and I think it really works well. And then just a little bit of nutmeg, some fresh nutmeg that I'm just gonna grate right in. I think it's amazing how these things that we're used to putting in sweet dishes work really well in savory tones like this. So what I'm gonna do is just kind of bloom those, meaning open them up, open their flavor profile up in the butter. And as they're stirred in, they're usually fat soluble, so you smell them so much more. And I really do think it just ends up being more flavorful overall. This is how I want my kitchen to always smell. As soon as fall hits, this is what I want. So into this now we can put our squash and apples. We're just gonna pour it right in. And at first you're like, okay, that's a lot. It is, but now we have our stock to add. So this is what's gonna actually be the liquid to our soup. We're gonna pour it right in. We're gonna let this come to a simmer, then I'm going to cover it and just let it go until it's fully cooked, meaning the squash and apple meets no resistance because we want them to be fully cooked all the way through. Do you smell it? I know you don't, I wish you could. The soup is almost done, it smells amazing. We're gonna quick make, I like to sprinkle some roasted pepitas on top, which is a pumpkin seed. This is a certain variety of pumpkin that has these beautiful seeds inside. And what I'm gonna do is put a little bit of olive oil on these just raw pumpkin seeds. So that's gonna be our kind of roasting agent, and then a plethora of spices, which is wonderful. Of course, salt. But then we have a mixture of some yellow curry, some cinnamon, some cardamom, a little bit of clove, and some cayenne for just a stitch of heat. Now I know it's like a lot, but it's kind of like a spice market right in these, and it's a nice little kind of flavor boost right on top to sprinkle the soup with. I just really like it. I think it's really simple and easy to put together. So you stir that all together in here. It smells amazing, just like the soup, and it kind of echoes some of those same flavors. These are good, by the way, as a snack on their own. And putting them on a parchment lined baking sheet, that's just so it's easier to clean up. I'm gonna pour them all right out. Kind of just put them out into an even layer if you can. That just helps them roast more evenly. And then we're gonna pop these right into the oven. And in that time, the soup is gonna be done. We're gonna blend it. And it just is gonna smell like the season in here, which is exactly what you want, if you ask me. This has been simmering away. And what you can see is that everything's breaking down. You can see the apples, they're almost like applesauce, which is exactly what you want. And you know, the way to check it, let me grab a knife here, is just to take a knife or something and just insert it. Do you see how there's no resistance and everything is just breaking apart? That's how you know it's done, because it won't blend well until everything is cooked evenly. Now, you may be saying, why do you always have to blend a squash soup? You don't always have to, but this particular one is nothing much to look at. The consistency and texture is much better after it's blended. Now, I'm gonna use an immersion blender. You can also put this in scoops into a canister blender, whatever works for you. I like an immersion blender, but it just, whatever you have. So you can see this gets beautiful and creamy. Now, you can enjoy it just like this. I do think it's enhanced with some cream, or you can use a milk. You can use a milk alternative if you want to do a dairy-free, but this just kind of adds a little bit of richness. I think it just kind of rounds it out a little bit more. So you can see this is that perfect mix of a soup, but still kind of thick and creamy in a beautiful way. So this is how I love to eat it. My roasted pepitas are out of the oven. I'm just gonna ladle some up. So at the end, you can always put, if you want, once it's in the bowl, you can put a drizzle of some cream on it again. You can put a dollop of Greek yogurt. I love that. It's really kind of whatever you kind of like to do. You can dress this up. Personally, this is all I need. But I will take a spoon, get some of these warm pepitas, which put in an airtight container once they cool. But look at that. I mean, this is just, to me, how I wanna enjoy fall. It's like a big hug in a bowl, especially on a cool, crisp day. This is what you want to come into. Oh my goodness. It's so good every time. I have made this for years now, and it never gets old, and I always look forward to it. I can't wait for you to try it. The cake is fully baked. I know, you were a little wondering what was gonna look like. That batter's a little bit different, right? But look how beautiful and golden this cake is. It smells so good. I've been letting it cool in the pan for a while. It's still warm to the touch, but I can touch it. So I run a knife sometimes around just to make sure. If you grease it well, I'm not worried, then you should be able to, look at that. If that is not beautiful, I don't know what is. So we can now pull it out from here. And again, if you want to, you can check around the center a little bit. You can even run your knife around this bottom. Again, I'm not worried, I don't think. I usually am not, but we are going to glaze it. Now, unlike in maybe a bundt pan where the bottom becomes the top, in this case, or like an Asian food cake, that's not what I'm gonna do. So we're going to first invert it and then put it on, like invert it right side up. Does that make sense? So I'm gonna take it, don't let this be scary. When you do it with confidence, nothing is scary, except sometimes it is, and I get that. Now I'm just gonna use my hand, I'm gonna bring it back, and pop it back on the plate. Do it with confidence and it's gonna work. If it doesn't, no one has to know, just put it back together. So what we have right here is a beautiful cake. It's gonna finish cooling a little bit while we get the frosting ready. So I'm gonna set it right over here. It smells so good, and does it not look good? I think they're really easy to cut when they're like that too, because you already have the center out. So what we have, we're gonna do a boiled frosting. We're gonna do a few things in it, some butter, obviously, and some brown sugar. We're gonna melt those things together on the stove and let them cook for just a few minutes. Really what we're doing is making a quick caramel frosting because the brown sugar is gonna bring out those caramel notes. Cooking it with the butter, we're gonna make sure it dissolves those crystals in the brown sugar, which is molasses and sugar put together. That's what makes brown sugar. So as we're cooking it, it's actually gonna bring it up to a temperature that it dissolves those crystals so we can make a frosting out of it. It's kind of a frosting glaze smashed together. It's only for a couple minutes that you need to cook it. And then what you wanna do is pretty much stop the cooking. We're gonna add some cold milk, which yes, it can bubble. Don't be scared. Just kind of mix that in. It's kind of like when you're making a caramel and it stops the cooking. That's kind of what we're doing here. And then let that just kind of bubble out, cools off a little bit, and you pretty much have kind of a caramel. Do you notice that? That's what I like. Now you can use vanilla to flavor it a little bit. I like to use some Calvados, which is an apple brandy. Adds a really nice flavor to it, I think, and works really well. But again, if you don't want to use it or don't have that, I keep it on hand in the fall, and I use it in a lot of different things because I think it has such good flavor. I will always add, of course, a pinch of salt. It has sweet because we're putting in quite a bit of powdered sugar here. So to do that now, I'll be whisking it more so. So I'm gonna take that out. I'm gonna put this in just because I wanna make sure I sift in the powdered sugar. If not, you will have lumps. And on a frosting or a glaze, you definitely notice them. So sometimes I find it easier just to take my whisk and just kind of whisk it through. Because what you're doing is breaking up all these clumps. And do you see all the clumps in there? Those are really hard to whisk out into your frosting. Look at all those. That's just not fun. So you have a few left in there. And then what I'm gonna do is just whisk it until it's smooth. Now, if you make the frosting or glaze too far in advance, it can form a crust. You can always add just a little bit more liquid to it again to kind of bring it back. But what I like is it to be the consistency here. See how it does that and it kind of just falls? Because then what I can do is take that and just kind of start drizzling it over this cake. It's kind of just like a caramel apple effect, I find. So if you just take it kind of in the tines here and just kind of drizzle back and forth, that's exactly what you want. And of course, once it's frosted, it's ready to enjoy. Now again, this cake can serve obviously a lot of people. So this is great to make if you have maybe like a meal coming up. You can even serve it for a brunch if you wanted to. You could use it as a coffee cake. It can be a dessert. Think of this with some cinnamon ice cream too if you really want to kind of drive home that season part of it. But look at this. It's full of apples. It's super moist, which is one of the things I love about this cake. And it has so much flavor. You can smell a little hint of that allspice. It smells so good. So I'm just gonna go in, take a nice bite. Look at that. It's good, it's classic. Has all the flavors you want. And personally, I love the walnuts in it. Do you see that walnut? We toast them beforehand so they have even more flavor and they don't get super soggy in the cake, which to me is essential. This honestly, this is what you want in the fall. This is what you want with apples. It's how you want to enjoy the season. I can't wait for you to tell me how you love it. Ice cream, you scream. We're all screaming for pumpkin ice cream. It really is a delicious ice cream, but it takes a couple things to understand pumpkin. Pumpkin has a lot of water content. So I am using pre-canned just pumpkin puree, not the pumpkin pie filling. You can make your own, but you want it to be very smooth, and the water content can be very varied with what you do at home. So using it from a can will be a little bit more kind of the same every time, which I like. So what I'm doing is putting it first in my saucepan. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take this over to the stove. We're gonna do something a little odd here. We are going to actually cook it a little bit first, because before we make the ice cream base, which is like all my ice cream bases, I wanna cook some of the excess water content out of this. So to do that, I'm just gonna kind of spread it out. It's gonna kind of have a thick bubble every so often when it comes up to heat, and that means it's just releasing some of that extra water. So how you can tell, because you're like, wait, what am I doing? What am I cooking? It starts to wanna stick to the bottom of the pan. See how it's starting to coat the bottom? That's exactly what you wanna see. That means you're kind of cooking out some of that excess water. It's not a lot, but it's a little bit, and it does make a difference, because too much water in ice cream gives you ice crystals when you go to churn it or freeze it. And you don't want the ice crystals, you want a little bit more smooth, or as much smooth texture as you can have. So what I'm gonna do now is add the rest of my base pretty much. So we have whole milk. So this is the right play kind of fat to liquid, kind of to what we need for a good ice cream. So we have whole milk, we have heavy cream, and again, this is the real cream, so it has some actual cream in it, which I love when it has the cream top on it. I think that gives it the most flavor. And of course we need a little bit of salt. That's gonna bring out more flavor. Don't think you can skimp the salt. You need the salt. We need some sugar. It's an ice cream. We already know what we're gonna have here. And then to that, we're gonna do a little bit, just a small amount of corn syrup. Now, I'm not gonna force you to put it in, but what it does, again, it's an inert sugar. It's not high fructose, it's just corn syrup. And it helps create a very rich, thick, creamy, without ice crystals. It helps the ice crystals be even smaller in the ice cream, which is what we want. So I'm gonna whisk this up just to combine really well, and you can see you're gonna start getting that pumpkin color, which I really love. And what I'm gonna do is put this on the stove and let it come to a simmer. We're gonna heat this kind of on medium-low, and while it's heating, by the way, if you ever have cream top cream, those pieces of cream will melt out as it's heating up. While this is heating, we're actually gonna get the slurry ready, because I kind of do a mixture of two different types of ice cream together. So as opposed to a true just French-style custard-based ice cream, which uses egg yolks, I'm gonna use some egg yolks, and I have them ready to go. We're using one more than I traditionally use in ice cream for what I make, because I want that little bit extra richness and fat to counteract that pumpkin we're putting in there. We're gonna put in a little bit of cornstarch. So adding cornstarch, some people are gonna say, you don't do that to ice cream. And it's true, you don't to some ice creams, but you do to my ice cream. Because it helps it become more of a thickened base, which I think creates, again, a better texture in the end. It's just better. Try it, and I think you're gonna love it. And so to this, I have just a little bit more milk. This is really just to help us be thin enough that we can whisk it easily. So I'm gonna whisk this, and this is pretty much like a slurry, but with those egg yolks. So once it's whisked, you can see it's right here. We're not gonna add it until this is up to temperature. So you can see this came to a simmer, and yes, it has high fat things, so you can simmer it. Now, usually you would temper in egg yolks. So pour a little bit of the hot liquid into here, keep tempering, adding more. We're gonna strain this at the end. I kind of just cut that step out when it comes to this. And so what I do is I stir, and I slowly pour in, since we have that cornstarch and a little bit of milk, and we're just pouring it right in, whisking the whole time, off heat, and then we're gonna actually set this back on the heat just for about a minute until it fully activates all that cornstarch. So it really doesn't take long. Already you can tell it's thicker. So this came back and just began to have some thick bubbles all the way into the center. You know it's ready to go, and you can tell it's thicker. So this is when you add the final flavorings. Some vanilla. Think of this as a pumpkin pie, but in ice cream form. It has some of the same elements, honestly. A little bit of ground ginger. That's just gonna bring out those notes, remind you kind of your favorite pumpkin dish, and some cinnamon. So we're gonna pop that right in. And I put those in at the end because I don't really want them to lose any of their pungency in the heat of cooking. So what I'm gonna do is just stir it. And then, like I said, since I didn't temper the eggs, and always in the end I like to anyway, just to make sure it's mostly smooth, I just take a sieve, a strainer, and pour this through. Because what that is gonna do is just make sure if you have any pieces of egg, for one, but also just any type of, sometimes the pumpkin has a little bit of fibrous pieces in it. Just make sure you get them all out. You see how easy this is? Now, this is where, yes, this is a true churned ice cream. This is not a no churn. I'm something, if you're gonna have ice cream, if you're gonna make ice cream, you really should just enjoy it once in a while in its true form, and that means churning it. So what we're gonna do is actually now chill this for 4 to 6 hours. You want it to be well chilled. The colder it goes into your ice cream freezer, and you can use whatever countertop model you have, the better it's gonna freeze and the better consistency it's gonna have. So you're gonna sit here with me for about the next 4 to 6 hours. I thought we could just chat a little bit. I don't know, kind of talk, think how the day is going. I'm joking. I have one ready to go. So we'll set this one aside. And I already had this one in the fridge overnight. So you can see once it sets in the fridge, it has kind of a thicker quality to it, like a thin pudding. We're gonna grab I use the attachment that goes on my stand mixer here. I just think it works really well. You can kind of use whatever works for you. And honestly, if you don't have one, you can find ice cream countertop freezers a lot of times in thrift shops. So it's something a lot of people end up thinking they're gonna use and don't, but the thing is, if you start using it, you keep using it. I use mine probably about once a week, especially during the summer. But during the winter too, I'm just someone that loves ice cream. And once you start making different bases and kind of understanding the principles, super easy. So this canister is of course frozen, just like any countertop model. You should always have them frozen for at least 24 hours. And now is the magic of actual ice cream, which is where you churn air into it, because that's what essentially makes it an ice cream. So we're gonna pop this on, bring it up, and start churning. So you can see when it starts to get done, it either sometimes pulls down, starts clicking, or it starts pushing it out because it's been going long enough. And you can see it's rich, it is creamy, it is dreamy. It's ice cream, friends. So this is the paddle. Now, when we were little and had a White Mountain, which I still have a White Mountain freezer, the 6-quart ones, and I do still use it sometimes, but the paddle was much bigger, and it is what we as a family then, actually just Dad, my sister and I would go in, and Dad would eat most of it, but we would sure try to beat him because my goodness, it was good straight off the paddle. But in this case, we're just taking all that beautiful, and look at the consistency here. I mean, you can see already how beautiful this is. So I always like to tell people, on a countertop ice cream maker like this, when it comes off of the machine, it's like soft serve at this point, which is delicious. It's like pillowy, marshmallowy almost, and it's perfect to eat just as is. But you'd want to serve it right away because it will melt quicker. If you want it to be more of a hard serve, you put it in the freezer in a container for a few hours until it's a little bit harder. But really, there's no wrong way. It's ice cream. There's only right ways to eat it, right? And that's just however you enjoy it. So what I'm going to do is you can put it into an ice cream container, which I do have some. I also have a loaf pan because it will freeze a little quicker sometimes in it. Or if you want to serve out of it and have nice scoops, it works better. But look at this. I mean, what could be better? So to me, it's very irresistible not to just eat it all, I will say. So usually I put it into a container right away. So I just have a serving because I'm obsessed with ice cream. I'm ice cream obsessed and will have it anytime I can. But what I'm doing, you can see, is just cleaning it out, and it has that beautiful consistency to it. It's like, look how creamy it is, which we went to great measures to make sure. We put in a little bit extra egg yolk. We made sure we thickened it again with that cornstarch, and all this helps counteract the iciness that could happen from pumpkin, which in this case, thankfully, is not happening. So you can of course serve it up however you want. I mean, look at this ice cream. I'll try it though for us. It's like pumpkin pie and ice cream. Honestly, it leaves you speechless. It's unbelievable. It's absolutely delicious. I truly hope you try it because if you're someone that thinks, I don't know, fall, what? Bring summer into fall with this ice cream. Okay, friends, fall is right here in front of me, and we have pumpkin or squash used in multiple ways along with apples and kind of everything the season really loves. This gorgeous apple cake, so much moisture to it, a great frosting, and just the essence of apple in every bite. We of course have squash soup, one of my favorites. You can use pumpkin, you can use squash, but it comes into a beautiful, creamy, rich, just delicious consistency that I crave all the time. And then we're finishing with a pumpkin ice cream. Why? Ice cream can be enjoyed any time of the year. Flavors can just transcend through different seasons when using things like pumpkin, like spices that bring it up. And we made sure it was a delicious, creamy ice cream. But honestly, all three of these are gonna be with you all season long. They're all gonna have different elements. They're great for gifting. They're great for having people over and enjoying together. And I know you're gonna love them just as much as I do. Enjoy. As always, all these recipes are in the description of the video and on my website, wyseguide.com, which is gonna have all your recipes you need for the season and all year long.